Hello malt mates, I'm Ralphie, this is the Whiskey Bothy and this is review number 1066 here on this well-established and fairly consistent whiskey channel. And it's not just whiskey, by the way, it's all quality spirits. It's a long and very interesting journey, and one which is rarely dull, because we have a primary mission, and that is to buy good quality whiskey which is readily available at decent prices. Now, I'm not saying cheap prices, because you'll always be able to find super cheap whiskey when you go to a supermarket or a bulk discount store. The quality may not be particularly good, and therefore the contents of the bottle may not be particularly interesting. No, we're looking for the balance here. The right quality, the right price, the practicality of the engagement, the connection by the producer to the customer. And this is why I'm reviewing independent bottlers. Because for Scotch whisky, they have been a reputational game changer. It doesn't matter how you look at it. If you really know Scotch whisky, you know that the contribution to the whisky scene from independent bottlers, which are companies that don't necessarily own distilleries, but they bottle casks from other distilleries, and they tend to have quite a wide range of options, and they generally bottle small batch, and they generally bottle at a higher delivery. So it'll be a higher strength, 46% plus, unchill filtered and natural colour, meaning that the actual quality of the engagement we get with the spirit is of a higher standard. And nobody's going to argue about that. Nobody. Not if they know whisky. So this independent bottler I'm reviewing for you is a multiple online Scotch Whisky Awards winner. Now, if you don't know about the online Scotch Whisky Awards, and you should, malt mates, you'll find a link in the description box down below. Needs no introduction, but I will introduce it anyway, just in case. Signatory Vintage. Signatory Vintage has won Best Independent Bottler of the Year for 3 successive years. And there's a reason for that. The company's very well established. It's been going for quite a long time. They have incredible stocks of whisky which they manage and cultivate themselves. And when they deliver the whisky to the market, you have a number of options. You have the cask strength, or you have a lower strength. But every now and again, when the lower strength, by the way, 46%, unchill filtered. But every now and again, they bring out a special option. And this is what I'm going to review for you in 2025. It is part of the 100 Proof series from Signatory. This is Mortlach 2013 distilled, 11-year-old single malt Scotch whisky, first and second fill Oloroso sherry butts, right? Useful information. Butts are big containers. They mature more slowly because of the surface to volume ratio. The result is that when you get whisky matured in butts rather than barrels, although a butt is a barrel, but it's a big one, you tend to get more of still signature. You tend to get more of previous content engagement without too much wood going into the spirit. That takes longer due to the size of the casks. I'm going to pour some of this. Let it open up a little bit. Let it gently oxidise in the ambient atmosphere of the Whiskey Bothy. On the back of the label, you'll see a QR code. Tells you more about the bottling, tells you more about the company. On the front of the label, hang about, it's not the front of the label, it's the back of the label. I know it's here somewhere. Hang about, is it? Where is it? I'm sure I was looking at it just a few minutes ago. Yeah, it's in the front of the label. Unchill filtered and no added colour. Unchill filtered and no added colour. This is a declaration of transparency as to the quality of the whisky. It hasn't been engineered down to make it more palatable for passive consumers. This is pitched at genuine whisky drinkers. Now, with Mortlach, which is a Speyside distillery, and before I go any further, I'm going to give you the bottling strength, because although it's 100 proof, it's European proof. Okay? So it's 57.1%. Strong stuff. I mean, you can put a match to this and it will burn. Right, so don't. So we have Mortlach, virtually full strength Mortlach, unchill filtered, natural colour. So whatever is there, there's going to be more of it, because it's simply more in the condition it was actually maturing in the cask. And this is a very important point to consider, is when you're tasting a whisky and occasionally you come across a little bit of disappointment, you find yourself saying, do you know what, the whisky's quite tasty, but I'm just not getting quite enough of it. And the reason for that's quite simple, is excessive chill filtration or excessive barrier filtration during the cold months when they don't need to chill it. And the addition of caramel colourant, artificial colourant, to make it just look better. And our palate is enormously sensitive, and we soon see through this masking that goes on, and it results in relative disappointment in relation to a perfectly competent whisky, because we acknowledge we're simply not getting the best version of what's there. And the reason for this is simple. Independent bottlers and small contemporary distilleries, particularly in Scotland, are just delivering more natural whisky. Whereas the big companies, as they continue to heavily engineer and slightly sanitise their product, they diminish what's actually there. But they have a reason to do this. Let's take a reality check here. They have a reason to do this. When you're selling huge volumes of bottles, you need to have as many globally based, happy customers as you can. And these people tend to be brand-led and easily pleased, and they don't want anything frightening like too much bitter sensation or sour sensation. So obviously you kind of sweeten it up, your brand, you deliver the approximation of the experience, and the majority of people who don't drink much whisky or who are not particularly interested in whisky but do buy whisky, well, they're happy. So there you have it. But for us, for people who watch videos about whisky, we're looking to take things further. We're looking to engage on a deeper level. And this is where these bottlings really kick in. There is no box, there's no fancy container. It is simply and directly, clearly presented in readable writing, because it's black and white ink. You don't even need your steampunker to try and decipher what they're actually saying. First of all, you can read the label, and secondly, the information of transparency is clear. It's on the front label where it needs to be. Non-chill filtered and natural colour. That's what really matters. So what are we getting on the nose of this Mortlach? A Speyside distillery, renowned for its savoury notes and depth of character. This is quite sweet on the nose. Sweet, crisp, gingery, little bit of cider vinegar. Yep, that's what I'm getting. Malty, absolutely. Butterscotch, yes. Soft vanilla, little bit. It's more like a sultana, half raisin note. Definitely signs of sherry, but the sherry's restrained, and we know this because of the transparency we're getting. This is a combination of, what does it say, first and second fill Oloroso sherry casks. So it's not just first fill, which would give a huge sherry overcoat, make it a sherry bomb. It's the combination of first fill and second fill casks, which have already been tempered in their assertiveness by previous whisky content. The result is that you get more of a balance, something that allows the spirit itself more room to express its character. And this is something that independent bottlers understand and deliver frequently. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes you can buy an independent bottling and it's not very good. Or alternatively, you can buy an independent bottling and it's quite bizarre and bonkers and completely out of character as to what you're used to from a particular single malt brand. But this is part of the journey. This is where we do our sleuthing, our Sherlock Holmes, our homework. We suss out what's the best compared to the rest. And that is ultimately our responsibility. Here with the 100 proof range, I would say we've got quite a number of best options. I've tasted a few of these now, and there's quite a story around this. I'm not going to go into it now. I'll cover that in my Whiskey Bothy review, 1066 extras coming along after this. But it's something I did discuss quite a bit lengthy in my Patreon subscribers monthly live stream, which went on for 2 hours and 20 minutes. All the questions and answers and all the deep dive conversation into what Signatory are really doing right at the moment, at a very difficult time of year to sell whiskey. And yet they're absolutely, to quote the quote, kicking the ball out the park. Big time. Hugely successful. And definitely highly recommended. Certainly by me. The gingeriness is opening up, that little bit of savoury, that slight bitter cereal note is starting to manifest itself a little more strongly on the nose. I'm going to have a first taste now. It will be very powerful. It is. It's a big nip, but it rapidly, on first contact, becomes grilled pineapple sweet. I'm going to add water here. There's also peach, apricot, a little bit of banana in there. This is a remarkably and unusually confectionery version, initially, of Mortlach. But Mortlach doesn't tend to kind of stick to its labels it's given. It tends to, particularly at a relatively young age of 11 years, the signature of the stills are still powerful and assertive. And once we've added 5 millilitres of water, just to help give us access, things really start to kick off big time with this. Gingery, very, very slightly fusile, smoky in the positive way. Barley sugar is rich, dense and savoury. It's a slow one. It takes a while to get up and running, but it's definitely getting there. Taste. A much more animated experience now. The sweet and sour, almost confectionery tang of the arrival very quickly gives way to an interesting fruit and savoury cereal driven development. The pineapples in there, apricot, very slight, not a lot. More peach, I would say apricot kernels. You know, that slightly almondy, like getting apple pips. It's very, very slight, gentle almond note. The sultana note is an interesting one because it's quite complex in its own right, and it's coming from the casks. So if it was just pure first fill sherry, it would have been more raisin. But because it's first and second fill sherry and a butt, what you're getting is more sultana than raisin, but it's a rich, complex, almost syrupy sultana note. And this is what's really driving the initial experience of this single malt. So when we come back to it after a few minutes, we're really starting to see the Mortlach signature of Dufftown just be just that little bit more definitive and recognisable. It's always been a firm favourite of mine, Mortlach, but I have to add that I've come across a few Mortlachs from independent bottlers which have been barking mad. They've been very, very out of character, very strange, took a lot of getting used to, but still a very interesting experience. Only for advanced palates, I have to add. I'm going to add a drop more water shortly, but the sweetness is becoming more fructose. It's becoming more gentle. There's peppermint in there. Good old-fashioned peppermint, a little bit of euthymol, a little bit of tiny drop of dentist mouthwash. Angelica, absolutely. Slight celery note in the distance. Yeah, that's what I'm getting. Don't tend to get celery a lot in whisky, but celery's very distinctive. And it's that kind of fresh picked, chewed on the stalk stem type celery. A little bit of Scotch mist appearing, because when signatories say they don't chill filter, they really, really mean that they're not chill filtering. So there's an honesty of transparency with this. I'll focus on the development now. Lovely, dry, savoury, almost slightly fusile, twiggy. Hint of a bonfire, but not much. Savoury cereal note. It's tangy. A little bit of rice wine in there. Ginger, soft ginger, pickled ginger. There's quite a variety of gingers coming in there, because as well as pickled ginger, as in sushi ginger, I'm also getting a little bit of sweet or confectionery ginger. Getting a touch of soft red cola, which is, I know it's not a thing in the US, but it is a thing in Scotland. Red cola is basically soft cola. The pineapple remains fairly well defined throughout. And in the finish, we're just getting that continuity of ginger and soft tannins. It's not a complex Mortlach. It's not an amazing Mortlach, but it's a very competent one. It delivers. You can see the quality of casks there, the quality of the spirit's fine. And the integrity of delivery is what makes it travel, which is what rewards the palate. One last taste before the malt mark. It's becoming drier now. A little bit more Riesling wine. Slight brulee notes. Dry brulee notes. A little bit of cold oak. What do I mean by that? I mean a little bit of matured green wood. So the wood in the casks is starting to join the conversation here. But in all, I would call this a very competent and interesting single malt. I recommend it. When I discussed it with my Patreon subscribers on my Patreon channel, Ralphie, the conversation quickly hotted up to folk just going out to buy bottles while they're still available, and this is one of the ones I recommended, because Mortlach is rarely boring as a single malt. Very, very rare. Always interesting, full of character. And in fact, what I sometimes do is just announce what I'm going to review in my general impression even before I review it, but that's only to Patreon subscribers, because they're the ones that are kind of show that extra interest. But there we have it, 84 out of 100. That's my malt mark. This is a sterling example of an established, reputable, independent bottler doing what independent bottlers are supposed to do and reaching a very grateful customer. And I want to put some meaning to the word grateful, because this cost me £45. What's really setting the heather alight no pun intended, about the 100 proof signatory range is how very reasonably priced they are compared to most other bottlings. The value to the customer is really amplified here, and I know why they're doing it, and I'm going to share why they're doing it from my perspective in my next review, 1066 Extras, coming along very shortly, and I hope to see you there.